A block Gemara. Today's daf is that Ayin Gimel Amber Aleph. Rabbi came along and said that if a person is a shchivna, a person the shchivna is dying, and he says, "Give a get to my wife," even though he didn't say, and it should take effect if I die, and so on and so forth. It's understood that that's what he meant, and if therefore he recuperates, then the get automatically gets cancelled. So we find out now, and everyone agrees. 6 lines on the top of the page. Rabba, both Rabba and Rabba, they both don't agree with Rabba. They say that if you didn't spell out that the reason why you're giving a get is because you're dying and you want to spare her, and if you didn't spell it out, then we say that even though Pihalacha, Rabba is right, technically he's right, that if you stand up, the get is no longer a get, we are going to maintain that the get is a valid get. You know why? Because people are going to say the following. If he gets up, it's not a get. When if he dies, it becomes a get. But they're going to interpret it that it only becomes a get after the person dies, and that's why if he gets up, there's no get. So they're going to then extrapolate what happens if a person says "Zeh get lachamisa." Well, I think it's a valid get because he died, and therefore it's a good get. But the truth of the matter is, you can't give a get to misa. And the truth of the matter is, the reason why the here is good is because as if he's saying, "I want to be get before he died," but he didn't say it. And therefore, a problem can arise. So Rabba Rabba don't agree with Rabba Huna. They might say that they get after Misa. So what happens if this? Mihadin, if he stood up, there's no longer a get. She's a married woman. She's a married woman. Rabba said, you know what? Because of this worry, let's say that they get is a valid get. So it comes out that the Torah says she's a married woman, the Rabbanan says she's not. The Torah says that she's a married woman, but the Rabbanan are so worried. We're about 8 lines on top of the page of Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph. We're talking about a person who was dying, and then he wants to get his wife to spare her from Yibum, and then suddenly he gets better. So Rabbi says that if you didn't spell it out, even though we know exactly what your thoughts are, we're going to maintain that it's and he got better. We're going to continue as if it's a valid get. So the question is, so we're up to the Ayin Gimel Amud Aleph, about 10 lines on top of the page. So Rabbi Huna say that if he didn't spell out the reason why he's giving her a get, and he gave her a get before he died, so we know what he meant. If he got better, we're going to say it's still a valid get because he didn't spell it out. People might make a mistake. So it comes out that the Torah says she's a divorced woman. Torah says that there's no longer get it. She's a married woman. They're not worried. So therefore they said, no, what? It's a valid get. How can that be? The Torah says yes. Because we already had this a number of times previously. Called the Mekadosh Adai Tzibod Mekadosh. When we get married, in the chuppah you say Kedas Moshe Yisrael, according to the laws of Moshe Yisrael. So we're giving it over the hands of the rabbi. So they have a right to cancel the whole marriage. Says cancel the marriage. I understand the Kodesh B'Kasper. I understand when it comes to money, and we already had in the past different understandings, but it's not really the place to think but basically, money, the Chacham have the right to make the money hefker. We'll say, you know what, the money that you gave was never really money for Kedushin. Fine. But if you make Kaddish B'Biyah, what are you going to say? In other words, but they live together, husband and wife. The Rabban have the right to say that all the Be'ilah that they had, all the relationships, was merely as Musa, it wasn't for the sake of marriage. Okay, Tana Bana, now we'll continue the interesting case. The rabbi said, what happens if a husband says to his wife, this get will take effect today, im mati mechayli. If I pass away from this chayli, from the sickness. Now, there's 2 ways of interpreting it. One of doing it is, if this sickness is what caused me to pass away. The other way of interpreting it is that I pass away while I'm still with this sickness. I haven't yet recuperated the sickness. And the house fell on him, crushed him. He was bitten by a venomous snake, and he died. So the din is ain't a get, not a get. Why isn't it a get? So if mechayli zen means because of the sickness, obviously not a get. I mean, if you had a car accident, anything would have happened. But the point of mechayli zen means with this sickness. But the reason why it's not a get is this is an event that happened that you never even imagined this would happen. So when you said, I'll give this get, you thought that this is another sickness, something that's, that could happen, that's normal. This is totally out of left field. So therefore, you didn't anticipate this. You didn't have in the mind, there's no get. But if he says, if I don't recuperate from the sickness, which he didn't recuperate from the sickness, because the fact he didn't recuperate, the house fell on the snake, it is a get. Now, what I just told you is the way that the Shami understands the difference between the 2 cases of Raisa. The first case of Raisa is that you're saying from the sickness and and you die, the person died, nothing totally unrelated to sickness. In the second case, he never said from the sickness. No, the way the Shaman they understood that the sickness had contributed. But in the second case, all you said was, if I don't ever recover from the sickness, the fact he didn't recover. But our Gemara doesn't understand that. Our Gemara understands that means while still retaining the sickness. Our Gemara doesn't understand the difference between the two cases. Ma'ash say for both of them, he didn't anticipate it. What's the difference? They sent a case from Israel where a person was killed by a lion. If he fell prey to a lion, there's no get because he never anticipated it. Which therefore means you don't understand what's the difference in the beginning and this. So why in the second case do we say it's a valid get? He never anticipated to be crushed by his house collapsing. So as a person, the person sold the property to his friend, and the vendor said, I take upon myself, go into the misyal. Anything goes wrong with this field, I will compensate you. Suddenly the king decided, you know what, we're going to move the river and they should go right across his field. Something which is nobody ever anticipates that to happen. Also, the Kamei de Ravina, so this person, the buyer, went to Ravina and said, I want to be compensated for this. He told the vendor, yes, go compensate him. You accepted any accident, anything will happen wrong. This is an oines that nobody ever anticipated, and therefore, when the person made a promise, I'll take care of anything that goes wrong, he didn't mean something that's totally out of left field. So why should he be responsible? It just so happened to be that involved. Years have to be really explained because Ravina and Ravashi are the ones who concluded Shas. And Ravashi was born according to Rashi. I mean, the more Gittin we had before Ravashi, I'm going to have a Kedushin. Ravashi was born in Kedushin then. Ravashi was born the day Rava passed away. And Ravina was Ravashi's good friend. How is he paskening? How is he passing Shilas, when Rava was still alive? Unless Ravina was far older than Ravashi. Amalu, he said to him, Rava said to him, this is an Einis al-Ashkiach, and therefore he's not responsible. Ravina turned around and asked Rava a question. Say, hey, Ravina must have been a little bit older. He's paskening and he's discussing with Rava. It says in Amish, in Abraisa, in the second case, if I won't stand up from the sickness and a house collapses, or Yechish was bitten by a snake, how does he get? It's a get. So we see clearly from here that even though you never anticipated the house will crush you, nevertheless, you said that if anything goes wrong, this would be a valid get. This is also included, even though it's an einus the leshkiach. I'm the other than Malaysia in again. If you bring me back to say for that I'm wrong, I'll bring you back to the nation that what the nation says clearly. If it says if I die from the chaylis and the house crushed him, it's not a get because it didn't anticipate it because an einus leshkiach. Because Rav has a problem with the Braisa, and therefore your question wasn't a good question. You had a very good question from the Sefer. Why did you give in to Rav's answer? Yes, even the kasha reisha sefer, because the brayso is contradicting itself, it's impossible. It must be the second half of the brayso was never really studied the base medrash umishabashti. It has to be wrong. So therefore, if we have a reisha and a sefer, probably the reisha is correct. People remember usually the beginning better than remember the end, and the sefer is wrong. That's why Rav is right. And we don't anticipate. Zil bosses for you have to look at logic, and logic makes sense. You never, when you said I'll cover all expenses, whatever it is, you meant expenses are normal. Gemara tells a story, a similar story. That Papa and who were continuously arguing with each other in halacha, but in business they were partners. And we have a few times in Shas. The Zdovin, they once purchased they once purchased a bunch of sesame seeds at Gittin Daf. They're the port of Bar Malka, and Ogar Malchi, and they hired some sailors to transport it across the river to their place. Kabilu Alayo, so the vendors took upon themselves until it arrives at the warehouse of Rav Papa and Yeshua, they'll be responsible. What happened? The slave is stuck in Malka. Suddenly, a dam was built, which is something which is totally out of left field. Papa and Yeshua turned around to the vendor and said, "Hey." So none of the goods never arrived. They said, well, you took responsibility. Hire us another means of bringing it to the house. Get some donkeys. Go ahead and hire donkeys. They should go transport. There's a bridge somewhere. Let them bring it to us. It's far more expensive. You took upon yourself responsibility. You took upon yourself responsibility. Also, the comment Rava, biggest mistake was going to Rava. He said to them, my white geese. You like the kachkas, and why were they called white geese? Because they were old. Now Rava was the Rebbe of Rav Papa, I wasn't sure, but Rava did outlive Abaya, and he called his students "you white geese" because they were Rashi because they had white hair, white beards. You guys are on the habit of pulling off people's clothes. In other words, you want to take money from the vendor when you're not right. When he said he'll take care of all the, if anything goes wrong, he meant things which could go normal. Something's a storm, but that's something that built up, something that blocked the river that they never expected. So they're not Mishnah.
They were hard business.
Oh, very hard.
We had a couple of times the stories like that.
Yeah, we had some of the gate. The Rob themselves also. Very barisik. Anyhow, talking about it like this yachid imay. The person gave a get to his wife, and he says this get should be valid imati. If the person said if he passes away, right? So what happens during the interim? He didn't pass away. Are they allowed to live together, husband and wife? How does it work? So the question really is he saying that the get is valid from today retrospectively? So if he dies, she's no longer a married woman. They shouldn't be living together. She's a pnuya. Or is he saying it should take effect a minute before he dies? Because that's all he really wants. He wants to make sure that she's divorced so that he doesn't have to end up with his brother. So all he means is that should be take effect a minute before he dies. So till then, they're husband and wife. Says the Mishnah, like this yachid imay, they should not live together. Why? Because maybe they'll have relations with each other. And but one reason possibly might be because since this is a valid get, and yet he's living with her afterwards, it means like a new marriage. So it's only the second get. It's as if it's not get yosh, not that the first get is canceled. It's a good get, but the problem is he like remarried her because the person does not make it be a biluznus. Or the other reason is that that maybe turns out to be that he won't pass away, which means maybe he will pass away, but he's divorced, and if he's divorced, she's a pnuya, and you shouldn't be living with a pnuya, and it's sin. So the Gemara, they shouldn't be living together. Forget about having relations. It shouldn't even be yichud unless there's somebody else there that they're embarrassed. They won't go too far. I feel like the Eved, it doesn't matter who the person is, even a slave, and it says an Eved, even talking about according to many, even a maid, if she has her own personal, chambermaid, that's different. Why? She does anything in front of her shivcha. It's not going to prevent her and him from having relations. Mahi Bais and Yamim. What is the status during those days? Rabbi Yehuda says she's a married woman. She's a married woman, and therefore, what do you mean? If she commits adultery, they will get chenek. If it was a chatas, if it was if it was by mistake, she will bring chatas.
She has children from the relationship.
Yeah. Well, the only reason why he's giving her a get is true is because there's no children involved. So I mean, the other the new guy. Yeah.
She's now an Asian.
Yes. Yeah. In other words, why? Because you the whole that the get does not take effect till a minute before he dies. So till then, she's a married woman, and therefore full married woman. Rabbi Yezi says megureshes ve'ein megureshes. Rabbi Yezi says no. Rabbi Yezi says where Rashi learns he doesn't hold of ain b'reir. It's not respective to the beginning, but every minute is maybe a minute before he dies. How do you know that? So the whole way through, it's a suffix. We'll see more later. She brings an asham tali. You don't get killed if she commits adultery because every minute is a suffix. Maybe she's a free woman because maybe he'll die in 5 minutes. So therefore, they don't get killed, and also you bring an asham tali. We'll see more later. Right. A very cryptic brayse. Let's say we saw them having not relations, but we saw them being together in isolation. And when it was dark, they found her lying not in the bed, but right next to the foot of his bed. But we didn't see anything untoward. First of all, we're not worried. We're not worried that they did anything untoward. There was no relations in, no intimacy. Number one. Then it says, but maybe there wasn't intimacy, and maybe it was nus, which doesn't make sense. You just said we're not worried that there was any nus between them. Then there's any intimacy. Now you tell me there was intimacy, and we're worried that it's nus. And then you tell me the ain't tradition, and we don't think for a minute that maybe this intimacy was to get married again. What's going on here? And therefore we don't need a second get. What's going on? So there's that we get to explain a minute. Rabbi Yehuda disagrees. He says, no, I disagree. I hold We say that the intimacy, maybe even though it might be a valid get, he married her again. He needs a second get. And the wording is af also. What do you mean also? Not only this, but also. What's not only, as we will discuss. So, Mike Gomar, what's going on? You thought I was saying we're not chayshes anything interesting happened. They tell me it was nus and not kedushin. You said it was kedushin. What's going on there? So we have different ways of understanding the brisa. Number one. Amar Rav Nachman said, Amar Rabba Rabu. Rav Nachman said the name of Rabba Barabu. Hachi Kamba. This is how you read the brisa. Ra'uha shenivala. That if you didn't see anything, then nothing happened. But what happened? You did see. You saw them having intimacy. So what do we assume? We assume that he married her a second time. He married her again, even though the get might be valid, or we say that was merely znus and there was no thought of a second kedushin. So Rabbi Buz like this: everyone agrees. The husband and wife, they gave a divorce, conditional divorce, and then they had relations again. It's not znus. Obviously, they're husband and wife. They love each other, and therefore you need a second get. But so what? What's the machlekes? Nosan lo ksafim. They had intimacy, and then he paid for it, as if she was. Maybe is it a gift, or is it as if she was giving him a service? Is chayshish shim nus? So the first opinion says, I think it's nus. Why else would you give money? The amrina basnan nus, he paid her for services. The chayshish we don't think, but no, but you don't need a second get. Either had intimacy, it was nus. Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says, Rabbi Yosef Yehuda says that no, we say that it wasn't nus. We say that this was kedushin. But the only thing is, what's the af? So in other words, when is there an argument of ein gimel on the base? So we're talking about a case where a person said that a conditional get that if he passes away, this get should take place before, and we had a Mishnah between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it takes place only a minute before he dies, so she's a married woman till then. According to Rabbi Yossi, every minute is a suffix. Maybe he'll die soon. It's not retrospective because he doesn't believe in Bereda, as some of the Rishonim explained. This is really Rashi, but. What do you call it? But every minute is a suffix, so therefore, if there's no misa, if it commits adultery, and the shegi bring us totally. And then we had this cryptic brisa that says, first of all, if they found them together alone in seclusion, that they that had intimacy. But then it said, but if we did see, this is how Rabbi Ravulans, we did see them have intimacy. According to Tanakama, we're going to say that it was purely. I'm sorry, and everyone says that we think that if there was intimacy, we say probably a second kedushin, they need a second get. But what happens if we saw money changing hands? According to Tanakama, you're just paying for services. There's no second kedushin here. And according to Yehuda, we say no. We say that the second kedushin they need to get. Says the Gemara, so let me ask you a question. So how are you going to learn at the end of this Masechta? We have a machlekes b'sham b'sil after he gave her a get. They were alone in seclusion in a hotel. Do we assume that something happened there or not? The big machlekes amarim how to understand the circumstances of this machlekes. But according to B'Sil, we say ein adam oisa bilosa bilos nus. Definitely, it's for the sake of marriage in a new get. According to B'Sham, I know it's nus. They don't need a second one. And the machlekes amarim, that how to understand the machlekes B'Sham B'Sil. So you did see them having bilu, or just even if he didn't, we assume that that because the husband and wife and they're alone in the hotel, probably. Something, there was intimacy there. So, says the Gemara, so according to who are we going to say? Rabbi Chana said, to explain the machlekes of Bisham Besil. He said, machlekes, when is the machlekes? That when they saw that she was boil, they saw that they in that hotel they had relations. Shammai says it's Muslim, Basil says it's not Muslim. So according to Beis Hill, if you saw them being boiled, we automatically assume it's for kedushin. Well, this is exactly what we said before on top of the page, that the machlekes of Rabbi Yosef Yehuda is only if there was money changing hands. But everyone agrees that if you saw them being boiled, definitely it's for the sake of kedushin. So because of money, that maybe changes the situation. So therefore, according to Rabbi Yosef and Rabbi Yehuda, they both are arguing in the view of Beis Hill, which is the halacha. So Abaloi Rush, if you didn't see the Hakel going to get Shani Kemang, Hakel goes with everybody. Everybody within Beis Hill, because that's the halacha. Fine. Makes sense. Maskula, Baya said, I don't like the pshat of Rabba Rabu. Why? According to Rabu, the whole machlekes in this Bryce on top of the page is what? With Rabbi Yisrael Yehuda and Tanakama is only if money changed hands. So the Iker Chasim and Aseifa. Why doesn't Bryce mention a word of that? About money changing hands. All the Bryce says is that, Rashi already says, well, even though the Gemara uses the word there's no problem of znus. Znus is an isa to a coin. Anyway, she's a divorcee. A coin can't marry her, so there's no issues here of. And if she's a bas coin now is divorced, she can still eat truma whether it was this or not. So just an expression doesn't mean anything. Master Abaya, immediately something funny. Where does the Brisa mention the word about money changing hands? I have a different shot in the Brisa. What's the argument on the come on the Brisa? The Brisa starts off saying that if we we're not worried about there's any intimacy, but then it says we're worried about znus. We say it's znus and it's not kedushin, and Rabbi Yeshua says it is kedushin. What's the circumstance here? This is how you read the Brisa. If you did see them having intimacy, you assume it's nus. And Rabbi Yisrael disagrees. He says, not talking about money, no money change hands here. Stam, you saw them have intimacy. According to the Kama, there's no znus. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, according to the Kama, it's merely znus. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, we say that what? It is marriage. That means, according to the Kama, he passes like Beishamai. Because Beishamai is one that says that if he saw them, having relations according to Rabbi Pshat in the Machlekes Beishamai Zil, Beishamai says we the one is loose, and that's Tanakama here. That Hammer will pass on Beishamai. How can it be? He's coming on. The whole Machlekes when he saw them having relations. I will let Roshila Dirakos him and again. Training comes out that one. And Beishamai is the only one who followed Basil. Because the Tanakama clearly says that we Abchayil is loose, and the Basil says in this very case we say that it was kedushin. Okay, that's what it comes out. Yes, that's how it is. For whatever reason, Hakam and Beishamai agree. I don't like your pshat the Braisa either. Why not? Cain, my af. Then the wording is wrong. Rabbi Yisrael argues fundamentally. You say that there's intimacy is nus. I say the intimacy was l'shen kedushin. That he wants to marry a second time. What's af? Also what? Third version of how to understand the Braisa, the cryptic Braisa. Rabbi Yisrael, but Rabbi Yehuda that I'm going to argue. That even you said that if we didn't see an intimacy, everyone agrees nothing happened. I disagree. Rabbi Yisrael says, not only if what do you call it? If you see, but also if you didn't see, in all instances we assume they had intimacy because they are husband and wife. If they're alone seclusion, we assume it's intimacy, and we're going to assume it's inclusion. That the af refers to even if he did not see any intimacy. We are worried about kedushin. So it comes out that the machlekes of Beishamai Hill doesn't work out of anybody according to this Brisa. Why? Because when did Beisil say that we say the kedushin only if you saw that they had intimacy, but if you did not see that intimacy, we assume nothing happened. Yet according to you in this Brisa here, according to Rava in this Brisa here, Rabbi Yehuda is saying that in all cases, even if he didn't say anything, we say the kedushin. Tanakam holds in all cases, even if he did see, there's no kedushin. So base still doesn't work out according to either. Only if you saw them have intimacy, Beishamai will have an argument. If he didn't see an intimacy, you only get works like nobody. It says the Mishnah, my base in Yamim, he made a conditional that if he dies from this particular sickness, it will be a valid get. What about the interim days till he dies? What's her status? Is she a married woman? Chayimisa for adultery? She always a suffix. My base in Yamim. Rabbi Yehuda says Ke'eches ish l'chol dvora. Rabbi Yehuda says she's a married woman because it takes effect 1 minute, as we'll explain the more soon. It takes effect 1 minute before he dies. Rabbi Yehuda says Migureshev and Migureshev. Every minute, maybe not because it takes effect straight away, but every minute, he won't die in a minute from now. So therefore, there's no misa achenik and there's no shintoli. Tali, we learned in the Brayse, Bilvad Shiyam is provided that he dies later on. If he doesn't die later on, comes out that never was a get. And then, of course, she was a married woman all along. According to everybody, if he doesn't die, there's no get here. She's a married woman, and then, of course, she's chayv everything. He says, he adds something. He doesn't say, stam, if I don't die, everybody dies eventually. And when he dies, have a gita. That's it sounds from here. That when does it become a get? Only once he dies. Sounds like it becomes a get after. And remember, Rabbi Yehuda says we don't say it's retrospective to today. If Rabbi Yehuda would hold that it's retrospective, like Mahayayin, then why was she in Eish Chol V'Reh? The fact is not Navos. But Kaimon ain't get lachamisa. This case, in other words, if you said Mahayim, everyone agrees that she's not an Eishes Ish, because if he dies, then she was free from Hayim. So what is talking about here? It's talking about he used the following words. The get should take effect while I'm still alive. Rabbi Yehuda understands it means a minute before he dies takes effect. So it doesn't take place after he dies, a minute before he dies. And according to Rabbi Yossi, even then we don't say it's, he says no, it's sort of a minute before he died, but we don't know when that minute is. So therefore every minute is a something
comes to be revealed once he's gone.
It's too late already. Right now we have to judge. She committed an Aveda right now. At the time when she did an Aveda, she was a Suffolk divorcee, so therefore you can't. And so we looked at the Bryce. We'll see. We looked at the Bryce. Yom time, the days in between. Baal Zakam says the days in between. They're a married woman. They're married. The husband has all the rights, the privileges, her objects, all the earnings, and the cancellation. Another neder, the Yoshi Yasher. Umetamlev is a coin. He can go ahead and Metame close it up. Harei hu ki ishta l'chol davar. And we're talking about a case, as we said, so they're married all the time. You're married all the time. We just don't need a second get. They're married till the very last minute, because that's what he says. The minute before there's a that's when the get takes effect. Till then, they're married, and you don't need a second get. Even though they're living together as husband and wife. That was the words of Yehuda. Rameya says, "Be'ilasa tluya." Rameya says, we don't know all the time what her situation is, because remember, a minute before she becomes a free woman, but we don't know every minute. Maybe this is the minute before. So no, the mayor holds when you say me'eshani ba'olam, you don't mean a minute before he dies. It means from today, from today, if the person ever dies, but we don't know. There could be she's a free woman the whole time. We just don't know, will he die or won't he die from the sickness? Yeah. So therefore, it's always depending. Rabbi Yossi says be'ilasa suffix. Rabbi Yossi says the be'ila is a suffix. No, but he holds it's a minute, not like I made that it's retrospective. He holds a minute before he died, but every minute is a suffix. Maybe that's the minute before he died. So bottom line is, what's the chilik Rabbi Yossi and Meir? We'll soon see. Yeah. The Chacham says megureshes ve'in megureshes. So the three opinions are made. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Yehuda sort of. Even though in theory maybe they argue, but the point is the same thing. Provided he eventually dies. If he doesn't die, then obviously there's no get, and she was a married woman. My Ika, first of all, made Rabbi Yossi. What's the made Rabbi Yossi in theory? They argue in theory. Rabbi Yossi says it's very retrospective, but you don't know the whole time. And Rabbi Yossi says it's a minute before he died, but every minute maybe this is a minute before. So the point is the same. The outcome is the same. So no, there isn't. The difference is if you bring an Asham Tali. According to Rabbi Yossi, the get does not take effect to the minute before he dies. And every minute is a suffix if this is the minute before he dies or not. According to the Meir, if there is a get, then it's retrospective. It means nothing happened wrong. You didn't do anything wrong whatsoever. There's no Asham Tali in that case. When Meir loy maisi Asham Tali, Rabbi Yossi maisi Asham Tali. Some of the Shayim want to learn, and Taisa also brings down. This has to do with the machlekes we had in Krisis when you bring an Asham Tali. If you have one piece of meat, you're not sure it's kosher treif, you need two pieces of meat, one definitely kosher, one definitely treif. Whether that's machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yossi. But anyway, Chachamim say megureshes ve'ein megureshes. Chachamim seem to be agreeing with Rabbi Yossi that what it takes effect a minute before you die. We just don't know. So what's the difference between megureshes and megureshes or be'ilas suffix? What's the difference? They're saying the same thing. So the Gemara, Chachamim hein Rabbi Yossi, aren't they saying the same thing? No. Ike benayu de Rabbi Zayda. They're not arguing the difference would be what Rabbi Zayda said. What Rabbi Zayda says, the wording. Amar Rabbi Zayda, Amar Rabbi Yom Rabbi Shmuel. Whatever we find in Gittin, Amar Chacham, the Chacham used the expression megureshes ve'einu megureshes, divorce not divorce. Ba'alach chayev b'mizanaseh. The husband still has to continue to provide for her. So according to the Chacham, they use the word megureshes and megureshes in this situation, since every minute is a suffix. It is a minute before, but right now they're still married, so therefore he has to take care of her. According to Rabbi Yossi, he doesn't use those words megureshes and megureshes because he holds he doesn't have to provide for her because maybe she's no longer his wife. Maybe he'll die in a minute from now. So therefore, that's the argument whether he has to provide for her or not. We'll stop here.